Welcome to the Matt Fradd Show. Today I interview the co-founder and executive director of Exodus 90, which is an ascetical program for men. We talk about the tremendous importance in the Christian life of asceticism, prayer, fraternity. You might be watching right now and you might be thinking, oh my goodness, I don't want to do Exodus 90. You don't have to. No one's telling you to. This is not just a big ad for Exodus 90. Rather, it's talking about why Exodus 90 started, why so many men are flocking to it, the importance of living a rigorous life in the Christian faith and things like that. I also throw a bunch of objections at James that I've heard regarding Exodus 90 and have him respond to them. A couple of things I want to say before we begin. Number one, please be sure to hit subscribe below and click that bell. That way you'll be notified every time we have a new video coming out, and that would mean a lot. Secondly, I have a wait list that will help you to get ready for Exodus 90. A bunch of people are starting at the end of this month so that they can finish on Christmas Day. Okay, so I want you to go to exodus90.com/Matt Fradd right now. Exodus90.com/Matt Fradd. That's exodus90.com/Matt Fradd. Sign up. I'll give you a bunch of information there about how to begin, what to do. It'll be really great. Exodus90.com/Matt Fradd. All right, check that out. Secondly, I want to say thanks to Strive for sponsoring this show. Strive, yes, it is a course that I helped create, okay? But listen, Strive is a challenge. It's a 21-day detox from porn challenge for men, which was created by me and the team at Cardinal Studios. Just in the last few months, almost 10,000 men, thank God, have stepped up to the challenge. So if you are a man who is struggling with porn or lust in any way, go to strive21.com right now and check it out. This is an amazing course that we've spent a lot of time preparing. The guys at Cardinal Studios, I think it's fair to say, have put around $100,000, if not more, dollars into this course. And in the beginning, it was about $50 to do the course. But thanks to a very generous underwriter, Strive right now is 100% free. That is to say, free. No credit card required, completely free. So if you're a man who's struggling with this, you're going to want to join strive21.com right now. Go check it out. See the testimonies from the men who have just completed this. It's really great. So strive21.com and join the thousands of courageous brothers who are on this journey together. Next year, we're in the process right now of developing a course for women, but right now strive21.com is just for men. So go check that out and tell everybody you know about it. All right, here's my interview with James Baxter. James Baxter, what's going on?
Matt, good to be here.
Do you have a brother with the last name Baxter as well? Because you Exodus 90 book used to say the Baxter brothers.
Oh,
what was that about?
His name is Doyle. So
you sound disappointed in Doyle.
Well, that story is not a great story. It's a story of we released a book with like all these typos.
Oh.
We released an old version of a manuscript.
Yeah.
And so we had to go like rush and fix it in like 48 hours, my brother and I.
Yeah.
And so that's when we became the editors of the book.
Okay.
Now, since that happened like a year and a half ago, we actually have editors that are way more competent than the two of us.
So is this a newer version?
Newer version, yeah. Fortunately.
So tell us what is Exodus 90?
Yeah.
How did it start and how are you involved in it?
Yeah, all of those are good questions. So Exodus started as a seminary experiment on the East Coast. So a priest mentor of mine, who's actually my confirmation sponsor, his name's Father Brian Dorr, was newly assigned as kind of a vice director of human formation, fancy title for kind of responsible for the men's character on their way to ordination. And when he was newly assigned out there, just realized as good as these young men were and their desires to serve the church, they had just all kinds of idols in the way of doing that in full freedom.
Were you in seminary?
I was not at that seminary, so I was not even in the first groups.
And what year was this?
This was 2011 to 2013.
So it's relatively
new.
All right.
Pretty new.
Yep.
So long story short, just tries, Exodus was an experiment. Just like, how can I help these men so that they're ready for ordination? And he loved the Desert Fathers of the church. And so that's probably the predominant spirituality of the exercise. But they just got together for 90 days. They prayed. They practiced asceticism, and they were accountable. And so it was so fruitful for about 10 different groups of 50 seminarians that over the course of 3 years, that when I was on my way out of the seminary, I wanted to go to business school, ring the bell, be a normal person. And he was like, hey, you know, if this is a need in a seminary, imagine laymen everywhere who don't have the luxury of a formation house. And so my task kind of became, how do I take these like notes on a Word document about what happened? You know, how do we structure that into a way that can be shared? And then how can we share that with as many men as we possibly can? You know, and so that kind of is the way I entered into the story. And we're going into year 5 this month.
Wow. So what is required? I mean, I know what's required of Exodus 90 because I'm 15 days in.
Yeah.
But what is required in Exodus 90?
Yes.
Just real quick.
Yeah, so real quick, Exodus is a 90-day spiritual exercise. So for 90 days, you commit to prayer. So you commit a holy hour, an hour of prayer a day with at least 20 minutes given to silent prayer. Whew. So we really encourage our guys, regardless of where they're at beforehand, to make it a custom to just learn to speak and to listen with the Lord daily. You take on a pretty thorough list of ascetic practices.
Let's talk about them.
Everybody talks about the cold showers.
Cold showers.
Cold showers in the Atlanta area are a lot easier than in the Fort Wayne area. But I love it when people in like Southern California complain to me like how hard this is. It's like, yeah, talk to the guys in like Alaska, you know.
Middle of winter.
Yeah. So, but cold showers. But to go down the list, regular intense exercise. We really bracket technology, so we kind of remove technology as a form of leisure. And just say, hey, for school and for work, you can do this, but otherwise, you know, kind of remove that from your life and remove those distractions.
So no television, no YouTube.
No, yeah, none of that. No social media, sports, movies, etc. So, and then you definitely kind of adjust the way most people relate to food and alcohol. So you don't drink.
Talk about that. No alcohol.
On Wednesdays and Fridays, we treat them like...
no alcohol for the whole 90 days.
Yeah, no alcohol
just to be clear,
90
not
days.
just Wednesdays. Yeah, and then on Wednesdays and Fridays.
Right, and then Wednesdays and Fridays, we treat them like Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, like the Roman Catholic Church prescribes for those days as fast days. So anyway, touches that. And yeah, I don't know if I said exercise, but we really encourage the guys to kind of get it in gear physically as well. Yeah, so.
This is cool because if I told my friends, you know what, I'm going to give up alcohol for 90 days, they'd be like, wow, that's really amazing. Mm-hmm. But then you keep going. And I'm not going to watch any television. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
And, you know, no snacks between meals. And it's pretty intense. How has it developed since its origins in the seminary? Have you adjusted it much? Have you added more, subtracted some?
That's super interesting. So frequently people ask, like, hey, you should add this to the list, or you should remove this from the list.
I had a friend who told me, hey, we should like not have sex for 90 days.
That's ridiculous.
And I said, with you, yes. But with my wife, you go to hell. No.
Yeah, you should, you know, maybe read a little bit of Theology of the Body is what you should do. So, but no, so when people say that, I just have never felt that was my role. You know, and so
with what?
With the program, with the exercise. You know, Father spent a lot of time crafting this in the seminary.
You haven't adjusted,
not at all.
Tinkered with it much.
Yeah, so all of the content, the meditations and stuff we've written to kind of speak more deeply into the realities of lay life. But as far as the sort of the structure of the exercise, I've just never really felt. And that's kind of a spiritual decision, I suppose, but that's not my role. In fact, when we first launched Exodus, some really good men even said, like, you know, this is just not realistic for laymen.
This is one of the complaints I hear.
Yeah, it's one of, you know, and I had no answer to that because I was just out of the seminary. And so I just was like obedient. I was like, okay, well, this is what it entails. We're going to just release it as it is. And, you know, this is a stupid saying, but, you know, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, the bottom line is that guys made time. And what we have found to be true across the board is the more that men commit to what's there, the more that they receive. And as soon as they try to manufacture, manipulate the experience, it's something, but it's not really what they were looking for.
Did you go back and speak to this priest who initially developed the curriculum and said, should we be adjusting it for people in the world?
Yeah. And to be honest with you, we didn't think that was the right decision.
I think you made the right choice.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really wise thing. Because I think there is people who do complain about this, but I think there's a ton more people who actually do it, and they realize we live really pampered lives. Like,
totally.
We live richer than the Babylonian kings.
Totally.
And we are so distracted that, I was just telling you I was in Africa for a week, and it was actually easy to do Exodus 90.
Sure.
Because a lot of those comforts were stripped away. I didn't
Yeah.
have the option to eat between meals. I didn't actually want to eat a lot of the food they were giving to me. God bless them. I wanted to be thankful, but I couldn't stomach it. And, internet wasn't really an option, TV. So I actually found it really easy. And so I actually came to my fraternity meeting on Monday with the brothers. I'm like, actually, I'm finding this really great. Whereas now we're on Friday, I'm like, oh my goodness, this has been such a long week, because all of those pleasures are immediately available to us here in America and other Western countries.
For sure. Or like if we just dialed back the clock, not even 100 years, but 50 to 75, a lot of what's entailed in Exodus was just a part of the fabric of human life. And so I think of, there's a lot of things and reasons you do Exodus, but at the very least, you're right, it's just this profound challenge to the pampered lives that we're used to.
Now, what is it? There seems like there is this desire on the part of many people, not just Christians, to live a more rigorous, more stoic life. You know? People are getting into CrossFit, they're getting into those crazy courses, mud courses or whatever they're called.
Tough mudders.
Tough mudders. Yeah. They run triathlons.
Yeah.
People seem to be recognizing this. We live in a pampered existence, and we have this desire to impose upon ourselves a ton of ascetical practices that my dad, when I grew up, I'm sure your dad too, would have never thought, I need to make my life more difficult in some ways.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to take a step back and just to realize that, corporations are incentivized a lot to make life easier, quicker, more comfortable, and they make a ton of money off of us for doing precisely that. And so where we find ourselves is a situation like the one we're in today, where, seemingly the toughest part of the day in America can be maybe the trek, between your car and your office in the morning, if you live in any kind of climate that's more challenging than,
the traffic.
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that, or just like the elements for like a few meters, or whatever.
Gotcha.
So it's important to take a step back and say, like, is this actually really good for me? And, despite like all the comforts, am I more myself? Am I in control, actually, despite all of these choices of comfort? And I think what most people experience is the farther we go along, it doesn't necessarily necessitate that, I'm maturing in sort of my responsibility, my freedom with all of this stuff. I become enslaved to it. And so, we are just kind of taking a step back and making the choice to say no to lower things that are not unreasonable. Like most, frankly, when ordered people, a lot of like good priests and stuff, take a look at Exodus, they're like, well, that's what I do every day.
Wow.
And it's like, well,
cold showers.
Well, good. Maybe for some of them.
Yeah, but a lot of this is they abstain from alcohol except for feast days.
Yeah, right. So it's not impossible. And so, all that's to say at this point, like 65% of the guys in Exodus are married. 90% of those men have kids. So they're making time for this amidst the hustle and bustle of life. And, somehow, it's not impossible, even if it seems daunting. And it's certainly when we look at it from the lens of the past, it was more like regular life, for sure. So
how have you found this liberating in your own life? I mean, this idea of being, idolizing these different things, and how has it been a liberating experience for you personally?
That's a great question. So I try to do Exodus once a year to stay in touch with it. You don't want to be a part of a team and not in touch with your mission,
a good idea,
right? So, I would say in the latest round, I think I experienced just a profound gift of just being at peace with myself without without distraction. So this kind of originates many years ago. So I left the seminary, like I talked about. And I don't know, we don't talk about this a lot today, but leaving a seminary context where things are super ordered and, you're kind of God's gift to the church and everybody's kids, should be like you, to all of a sudden you're just a normal person and you got to make ends meet, and you got to figure it out. It's a really rupturing and kind of a challenging psychological situation. And certainly for me, it just kind of like, it was kind of traumatic. It was like, man, I'm the same person I was, but I'm viewed differently or I'm treated differently or whatever. And what kind of had resulted from some of that was just like, I would work harder and harder on Exodus, to help it to grow, to move it and all this stuff. And I realized, that's not truly free. That's not real freedom. I'm not, I'm running away from some of these kind of wounds, And so Exodus kind of created a space where I had to look all that stuff straight in the eye, and get the help I needed to get. And without it kind of removing some of my distractions, I don't know if I ever would have got there. And so literally one of my favorite things now is just sitting there and kind of like getting in touch with myself. How am I actually doing? How am I actually feeling? What am I feeling, And I think when most people are honest with themselves, like they're just running away from things. And to be honest with you, in the last year, it's just like been profoundly like just a gift to not feel like I'm doing that anymore.
Wow.
So anyway, that's kind of personal, but that was kind of a personal question.
Yeah, I want to be personal. What would you say is the most difficult thing for you personally to give up? In other words, if you could give yourself a break, not that you want to because it's not the point, what rule would you relax to make it so, what would make it an easy 90 days? By relaxing one rule, what would it be?
Yeah. I dislike the cold showers tremendously. I dislike them. One of the decisions we made as a team, though, so there's just a couple guys that are working on the ministry full time. Okay. And we just realized, like, we need to be praying more for all the men in Exodus and all the men that are called to it that we haven't yet reached. And so we decided, when you come join the team, you take cold showers every day.
Oh, so the people who work for Exodus.
Work for Exodus,
So you take cold showers every day?
Every day, and then
even when you're not doing Exodus?
Even when you're not doing it, and then we also commit to Mass and doing a daily hour of prayer. Wow. And so, I don't say that in any way to brag. It's not that impressive. It's just to say, like, I dislike that part, which is why I keep with it, because, I have experienced the power of, when I say no to these comforts, it actually reinvigorates me to say yes to the more important things, being attentive to my wife, listening after a long day at work, and being present, all of those things, which, when I'm just distracted, I'm not showing up for, so anyway, cold showers, I hate them, but I do them because of it.
I think for me, I don't know if you know this because I think we've texted about it. I did a solid Exodus 22.
22, yeah.
Crushed it.
And then you quit.
I quit. Yeah. Because I'm a loser.
It's not because you're a loser.
That is the reason. And I say that because I'm tired of men quitting halfway through and blaming Exodus 90. Yeah. Exodus 90 wasn't why I quit. I quit because of me, because I was flabby and weak and, I should have stuck with it. Now, I think if I'm looking back and I see why was it that I quit, I think number one, I got excited one day, and given my temperament, I'm like, let's just do it immediately. Yeah. So I don't want to wait till the next start date. I don't want to prepare. Yeah. I just want to start. The next thing is I didn't have a fraternity. Yeah. I talked one guy into doing it with me like 5 days later, but he's a real lone wolf. We never chatted. Yeah. And I remember just one day I got in the shower and I turned it all the way hot and went, done. And that was it. And I just quit. I just completely quit. Yeah. Talk about fraternity, because we haven't really touched upon that yet. How vitally important that is to the success of Exodus 90. Yeah,
it's everything. I mean, I think it's, and it's not to devalue the prayer or the ascetic components, but, one of the most, I think, life-giving parts of it is you're newly accountable to a group of men. So if these are previously your friends, your relationships grow way deeper. And it's just a powerful thing to be accountable, to know that there's this place in the world where you're not getting away with anything. That's actually like an incredibly liberating experience, right? And it's also so powerful to see what God does and what grace can do in the lives of others and how that can motivate you. I've seen this countless times in fraternities where guys who, quote, have it all together or whatever are just so moved by some profound conversions they see in guys who maybe weren't as spiritual before they started Exodus, but how that sort of makes them double down and realize, like, man, no, there is more progress to make. I can know the Lord more intimately. So anyway, all of those things you lose when you lose a fraternity. The other big thing is, like Exodus, without that opportunity, it can easily become, an opportunity just for like self-reliance. And that's something, that comes up from time to time is like, oh, you're just, forming everybody into Pelagians. And what's funny, when you look at that heresy, it actually has nothing to do really with self-reliance. Okay. However, all that's to say, it's like when you're in a fraternity, you can't. I mean, it's not just about you. It's about your brothers. And so that's why that weekly fraternity meeting, that daily check-in with your anchor or your accountability partner is essential for Exodus to be what it was meant to be. So we had that question a long time ago, like, well, do we keep the fraternal component together as we share this with other men, and we're just like, yeah,
We have to.
We have to.
Yeah. And so to be clear for those listening who aren't familiar with Exodus 90, what is an anchor?
Yeah, anchor, accountability partner, just so somebody that you check in with daily.
Within the fraternity.
Within the fraternity, right. So, say you're really struggling with, maybe you're just not actually praying. Like you don't have a daily prayer life. Like this is someone you talk to and say, hey, today, I made my commitments that I said that I was going to make, So
I got to share this.
Sure.
I'm pulling this up on the app while we're talking, the Exodus 90 app, which is amazing. Okay.
Hey, first version, we're still working on.
This is incredible. I'm so glad you invested whatever the heck you invested in this app to make it great, because it's incredible. But this shows you one of the guys in my fraternity, Danny Ryan, amazing guy.
Yeah.
And I was sharing this in the group. I'm like, I'm kind of afraid that I'm just going to give in again, and he's so encouraging. He said, he texted me, I'm excited because you are going to complete this Exodus 90. We will support you however we can. And please be sure to lean on, this other brother when you feel weak. Anchor's a key to get through this. He's done it before. But it's just amazing to be with these brothers. The other reason I think it's important to have a brotherhood is, while you should not begin Exodus 90 thinking, I'll probably slip up. Like you should be fully committed, expecting never to slip up. There can be a temptation, I think, to treat it like an all or nothing experience. That is to say, I screw up one day and I intentionally screw up. I'm like, hot shower, don't care. Yeah. But if you've got brothers, they're like, it's all right. Get back up.
That's right. They just put things in perspective, and typically a perspective that's a lot more like God's than like yours.
How so? What do you mean?
I just mean I think God's a little bit more compassionate upon us than we are upon ourselves.
Amen. Yeah.
And which is to say, you're really right about that. Like, when you take your hot shower on day 22, it's just an opportunity to come to the fraternity and be like, yeah,
I did it,
and it's time to move forward.
It was
from
amazing.
there. But and it was amazing. We're really missing out.
Yeah.
But all that's to say, it's really true. I mean, Exodus does entail a lot, and we certainly don't want to contribute to a sort of scrupulosity in people's lives. I was meeting with a fraternity earlier this week.
Yep.
And the guy, I think, one of the men that I was meeting with was legitimately disappointed that I was not more intense than I am. Like I'm a pretty, I wouldn't say mellow, but pretty even-keeled person, And he's like, I just thought you were going to be way more intense. You're going to come in here, be ripped and super intense and swear at me and ask me to, whatever. And it's like, that's just not who I am, and not actually. I don't think that's actually the spirit of Exodus either.
Exactly, because one of the criticisms I've heard, and it seems like a criticism from somebody who has not read what Exodus 90 says about Exodus 90.
Yeah.
Rather, it's something they've just picked up on, some idea they have of it.
Yeah.
Is they said, I'm tired of this macho, climb a mountain, beat your chest thing.
Yeah.
Tell us why this isn't what this is about.
Yeah, so I was asked that recently as well, actually. Like, are you trying to form the Navy SEALs of the Catholic Church or whatever? And I sat with that question and I tried to answer it, and then I realized, actually, I'm sorry, that's not the answer I want to give you. This is the answer I want to give you. And I said, Exodus is not for everybody who has it figured out. I don't think you need Exodus if you have it figured out. If you think you have it figured out, you probably don't and should check that out. But it's to say, it takes a dose of humility to even start this. I mean, if we return to the scripture a little bit, the story of the Israelites is a story of a lot of ups and downs, a lot of failures, but profound redemption as well, right? So you have to admit to an idol in your life, and which is to say this, that Exodus is for pretty normal people, and at least, what drives our team, what moves us to do this work is that we know that the Lord wants free men. And we know that, or at least we have the belief that men, I think, are the greatest untapped resource in the church today.
Amen.
I mean, think about it. I mean, guys are, going to work, accomplishing all of these kinds of secular pursuits, none of which are necessarily bad, all of which can be infused with the spirit of prayer. But then they're asked almost nothing in the parish.
Yes.
And I think that's a tragedy. I really do believe that Exodus could be a powerful way to sort of kind of galvanize the men and return them to the power that they have as men to be spiritual leaders. So I say all of that, and it could be inspiring maybe, but it's also to just say that, that's not for the Navy SEALs. That's for normal men
Besides,
who are
I'm pretty-
baptized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Besides, if a Navy SEAL read what we have to do, I'm pretty sure he'd be like, "Oh gosh, that's a vacation."
Yeah. So if you are a Navy SEAL and you've been through Exodus, maybe reach out to me. So then I'll stop referencing Navy SEAL. So, but
No, it's spot on though. I mean, you're exactly right. We're asked to show up. Could you please show up once a week to Holy Mass? Like, could you do that?
Yeah.
And we cannot respect it.
Yeah.
I think this is the reason so many young men turn to Islam. Is because they see a masculine religion that is demanding something of you.
Yeah.
They go to the Catholic parish and it's hand-holding and felt banners and crappy music.
Yeah.
You can't respect it. You can pretend for a little bit.
I think the farther we go along too, we're going to see less and less analogies with the secular world. Like that's a way we try to relate to the world and like, you know, sort of cloak worldly principles and spiritual talk. I think the farther we go, the more we're going to realize like we actually really just need like the undaunted, clear, pure claims of the gospel to move us again. And that's what's going to attract. And so with Exodus, like for folks that come and say, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to change all these things, we just say, you know what? Maybe this just isn't for you right now. Yeah. And that's okay.
Totally.
Like no one's compelling you to have to do this.
You're not a bad Catholic.
You're not a bad Catholic.
Or whatever.
Right. You know, so to us, it's like, you know, it's a 90-day spiritual exercise that will lead you to greater freedom. And we've observed this thousands of times at this point. And at the very least, it is a profound challenge, you know, that is speaking to the heart of men. And but if you want to just kind of manufacture it or adapt it all, it's like, you know, just do something else.
And that's okay.
Yeah. You know, there's plenty of other opportunities that are good opportunities than this.
Now, we have to talk about when I first heard about Exodus 90 and what I had to say on the Catholic Man Show.
Oh.
Not the Catholic Man Show. What are they called?
Catholic Stuff.
Catholic Stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so few people will recall this because it was so long ago. But I did an episode with Catholic Stuff You Should Know, when? 2 years ago, maybe?
It was years ago, yeah.
And I said, I didn't mention Exodus 90 by name because I didn't know what Exodus 90 was.
Yeah.
I was just somebody who was working with men and women who were addicted to porn.
Yeah.
And then I heard about a bunch of people who were giving up warm showers, giving up snacks, giving up legitimately drinking alcohol. And I said on that show, I don't think you should do that. I think if you're legitimately addicted, then denying yourself legitimate pleasures will just cause more sort of emotional turbulence, and you'll end up reaching back for that greatest pacifier.
Yeah.
Now, this in some quarters has led people to assume that I'm against Exodus 90.
And we don't like each other.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't even know who you were until like
I know. You were famous and I was just sitting in the background.
I'm huge.
Actually, when you took the shot, not that you took a shot, because that's actually, I think, the point you're going to make.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. Matt Fradd's even talking about us.
Yeah, shut up.
Man, this is growing.
That's so funny because I'm nothing. But yeah, and so just to be clear, like I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was a thing. Mm-hmm. I had just heard 90 days.
Yeah. So,
but there you go.
I would just say.
So I guess this leads me to the question: is this an addiction recovery program?
Yeah, it's not, and that's a really important thing to say. So, when we started, that's really kind of how it was labeled, and I fought that so hard because, like, there's no need to reinvent the 12 steps. No need at all. And in fact, you know, you're right. Like, for those guys that do experience profound sobriety during Exodus, and they do, I was talking to a priest who really enlightened me as to why. It's just because you're removing triggers, those triggers of which should never come back after Exodus. And so, you know, he was kind of complaining, like, for guys in the throes of addiction, well, their addictions just come back after Exodus. And so all that's to say, like, when you really need, when you're in an addiction, you know, you need the help that you need. You know, and Exodus is not a 12-step program. It can be a great sort of step on the path to recovery. Yeah. In fact, as we go along and as the ministry grows and hopefully as bandwidth grows on our team, one of my greatest desires is to serve better those men that are actually looking for something else. They're not actually looking for Exodus. Like, they're looking for therapy. They're looking for a 12-step group. You know, but at the same time, I'd then just defer to the therapist. You know, it's like, you know, if your client, you know, needs, you know, many therapists reach out to us and say, this has been an incredible supplement to our work together. You know, so that's great, but I defer to them. If they say Exodus isn't for you, like, you need these comforts in your life to kind of keep the wheels on and to continue to make progress in your sobriety, then go for it, right? But again, so Exodus is not an addictions program. It's not a porn program. Though a lot of guys come to Exodus struggling with it because that's just society today.
Tell us about
but that's okay.
Tell us about the victory stories you have heard, though. I'm sure men have gone through Exodus 90. They're like, I'm actually haven't looked at porn in 90 days or 100 days or whatever.
So that happens frequently. I would say it's the testimonies that keep me going. It's the testimonies that motivate me. To be honest with you, at the beginning, when we got this up and running and started, I thought I had done my favor for my friend and I wanted to go on with my life and, just kind of go to business school and keep going, But it just kept growing, and it was always conversations with men that made me realize, like, wow, this really had an impact on you. So we talked to some guys in Dallas, and this was honestly almost like 100 days after we had released it. So they must have just like jumped right in, and they called me up and they said, this is what happened to me. So this guy had a son with disabilities, and this helped prepare him like for that experience to be the father he needed to be. And he convicted me of the work that we were doing. And as we went along, and then, so his name's Mike, he's in Dallas area. And then there was Paul in Colorado. Paul had been struggling with pornography for like 45 years. And so, the definition of an addiction, been in the confessional the whole time, and through Exodus and after Exodus, by just continuing to kind of maintain the new structure in his life, bringing his wife into his sort of recovery, he's been porn free. And so we don't make that promise. We don't say like, if you're in an addiction, we're not going to promise you that.
90 days and you'll be fine.
No, this is not a magic bullet. Right. This is the competencies of the church: prayer, asceticism, fraternity. Nothing remotely new, about what's being presented here. But that's the delight of it.
That's the attraction.
So that's the attraction. Most recently, though, I'll tell you this story. I met a young man. He's in high school, and so we don't have a lot of groups that young. And he said to me, James, I didn't know that there was a world on the interior, which is to say, like, he could never really just sit there and pray and encounter God and the saints and just the spiritual realities that are true. And through Exodus, he said, I get like lost in prayer sometimes, and in a positive way, not like, I'm confused, and to me, like, that's just like profoundly moving, because I think God is way more present than we commonly experience, because we're just so distracted.
We're looking at everything but
everything but God. And so anyway, I say all of that because there are many different kinds of graces, like, prayer, character, or like the intersection of Exodus and just life circumstances that, have just really motivated our team. And actually we do this thing where we found out, like, every day at Amazon, or every corporate meeting at Amazon, Jeff Bezos leaves an empty chair for the customer. And I'm sure, they have all kinds of odd motives for that, most of which I probably don't agree with. However, it occurred to me, like, we need to leave an empty chair for the enslaved man, and we need to remember him every time we get together and try to improve, the work that we're doing. And that's what motivates us. There are men everywhere, good men, full of potential, full of power, that are stuck and distracted and not being the spiritual leaders that they're called to be. And that's what motivates us. That's what drives us. That's what gets us up in the morning. That's why Sunday at night, sometimes I can't get to sleep because I am so excited to wake up and go crush the week.
That's great.
Because, it's like there's just so much at stake, and this is bearing so much fruit. So, yeah.
Oh gosh, it's fantastic. Asceticism was not a word I heard of as a kid in the church. Did you?
Yeah, no, not a lot.
I was lucky if I heard the word fasting.
Fasting, yeah.
It's almost, I wonder if in the minds of many people, asceticism and Exodus 90 are going to become intrinsically linked, because it's only thanks to Exodus 90 that people are learning to practice asceticism.
Yeah. So that is kind of the value, or the sort of representation that gets the most kind of attention, right? And we had actually a decision at the beginning, like, no one knows what this word is, so why would we use it? And, I was like, what? Maybe that's the point,
Yes.
And then, like, you read the catechism and you realize, like, wow, this thing is everywhere. So anyway, all that's to say, this idea of saying no to lower things so that we can say yes to higher things is important. Yeah, it's funny though. Like you get together with guys, and it's fun because there's so many men now that are through this, most of whom can't say the word asceticism. So actually,
Asceticism.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
and I'll be in fraternity sometimes, and of course I won't mention it until like the last meeting. Like, yeah, for the last 90 days, like you've been saying that all wrong, but
I've been offering it up every time.
Yeah, but I do. I'm starting to see that word and just the practice come up in all kinds of new places now.
Right.
And in
the
a lot
world
of
hijacks what the church drops.
Yeah, that's so true. But I'm also seeing it in like church ministries, kind of a representation of, kind of taking Lent a little bit more seriously, or other periods throughout the year that are not Lent, which was really common in church history, not very common today. And I think that's a beautiful thing. What we always say is like, hey, this is an experience where if you take out the prayer, or you take out the asceticism, or you take out the fraternity, you're not just compromising on Exodus, you're compromising on the faith.
Yes.
Like there's nothing, again, like
you don't drop asceticism after 90 days.
Right. Yeah.
It
right.
might change.
Or after Lent, you
Yeah.
know, you just don't. It's a part of being a disciple of the master. At least until he comes again. So
why don't you have Exodus 90 for women? By the way, I was talking to my wife about this over coffee this morning.
Okay.
And she's like, would you please tell him thank you for not having this for women?
Yeah.
And she said for a couple of reasons. And then I'll get your take. She says,
yeah.
first, we already have a ton of things. Like
Okay,
there's
yeah.
so many things in the church that are aimed at women. She's like, secondly, honestly, she's like, we women suffer more than you men do anyway. It's like every month we have a
100%.
whole week where we have to suffer.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think it's like, women, just go find your own bloody thing. Men just want something that we can do together.
Yeah.
The same thing will happen, I think, to Exodus 90 as happens to altar serving in Roman Catholic parishes when you allow girls in. The men just leave.
Yeah.
Or if women start
Yeah.
coming to cigar bars.
Yeah.
We just want a space where we can be together.
Yeah.
All right, now you give the much more appetizing reason you don't have Exodus 90 for women.
I mean, we do get the email between 10 and 15 times every day. And we have for like
No way.
14, or not, sorry, like the last 4 years since we started. And, to be honest with you, there's a real joy in just staying focused on what you're called to do and saying no to the things that you don't know,
Yeah.
And so for a long time, I just said no because that wasn't what we knew. That's not where this started. I've always considered staying near the origin to be pretty important. And then also just, in prayer, like it would always just agitate me. It's like it raised way more questions in my heart than gave me clarity. And so finally though, like this chorus is just like resounds to us. And so we finally made a discernment. We got the Sisters of Life involved. I don't know that they wanted me to say that, but we kind of made this discernment for about 6 months with them. Like, hey, this is how Exodus works. Their ministry is so powerfully in touch with the feminine spirit and genius. And so we were like, you know what? We don't need to make this decision. Like, let's let them.
You do it.
Yeah. So, and we made this discernment and frankly, it just came back like they weren't called to. They didn't think we were called to. They don't actually think that the model that Exodus is on is a model of healing for women. And, to be honest with you, it's just that just brought a huge freedom to our team to just stay laser focused on what we do, which is freeing men.
That's terrific. And I got to say, I think it's great because I think like a lesser man or someone just after money would be like, yeah, let's open this up for women.
Yeah.
We could do a whole line of women's t-shirts and women's books.
Yeah.
We could do Bible studies for women and we could bring in a bunch more money.
Trust me. I mean, that's I am kind of entrepreneurial and I meet with a lot of business leaders and they all say that same thing. Like, this is a market opportunity. And it's just like, well, it's not mine. It's not what we're called to do, So, and you were saying earlier about your wife and just kind of the natural rhythm. And I see this so much with my own spouse, with Colleen. I mean, she's an incredibly grounded person. And I think part of that is just because of how in touch she is with her own femininity. And I think Exodus would be kind of an abstraction from what she already knows. Unlike for men that need to be disciplined and need a structure, I don't think that's true. We were talking earlier about this. Like, when I look at, the problems we can go through, it's most of the time my fault because I'm distracted about something.
Because you're recently married.
Well, yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
And so
married a
you're
year
just
ago.
Oh, I'm sorry, a year ago. So you're discovering this.
Yeah, discovering this. And I'm just realizing like,
if
wow.
there's a problem.
If there's a problem, it is mostly my fault.
So she should want you to be the one to get your stuff together with Exodus.
Yeah, precisely, you know. And from there, it's just about being attentive, you know. And so, anyway.
This brings me to a question I wanted to ask you. I reached out to some of my patrons. Here's what somebody said. They said, I have heard it said that spending $10 a month to sign up for Exodus 90 is a waste of money, and that the money is just being kept by the people running Exodus. Essentially, some people say that it's just not worth it when I can do Exodus 90 without signing up and paying monthly. I would be interested to hear what he has to say on this. Thank you.
That's awesome. So we are a not-for-profit. We are a ministry. So definitionally, every dollar in has to be reinvested in the mission. So, I don't know. We do get that, especially with kind of the rapid growth of Exodus over the last few years. Like, oh my gosh, there's this many guys to this, so you have all of this. But it's like, well, when you have a growth mindset, actually you take all of those dollars and you know that what that means is an opportunity to go reach more men. So all that's to say, I think that's kind of an easy out. And that can come from all kinds of different places. I doubt it's from a place of actual freedom. The other thing I would just say about that is like we're wasting money on things all the time. So $30 to cover a cost of something that could potentially be a profound impact upon your life.
That's $30.
It's $30.
I don't know how someone could say that's too much money. $10 a month.
It's like
the other thing is, I'm sure you would say, people are welcome to not give you the money and just to figure out from this. We've already talked about what the ascetical practices are.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Don't get Exodus 90. Just go
problem.
do it.
No problem at all. So, again, I also think like that can only come from a place where you've never started anything and you have no idea
how much it costs.
How hard it can be.
I don't want you to tell me how much this app costs.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't put you on the spot like that. Nor have you told me. I'm going to guess it was over $100K to create an app.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like things good, whiskey costs money. Water's free, whiskey costs money. That's the saying.
Yeah. So, and the other thing about this too is, like when you, especially as a man, when you invest in something, you're more likely to follow through on it, right?
Totally.
So it's not to say like free resources are a bad thing. I mean, Dynamic Catholic is crushing it. They do so much good work on kind of a free resource donor patron model. But when you're starting from scratch and have zero reputation, that's just not possible.
Yeah.
So anyway, that investment is, I think, really important for guys. Like at the very least, come week 10, I don't want to keep doing this, but you know what? I'm invested in this, so I'm going to. So, that's what
cool. And it just bothers me too because, I don't know, like, I'm for capitalism. Like, even if you weren't a non-for-profit, good for you. Make a ton of cash. Do what you want with it. Employ people.
So,
but you're
here's
not.
what it is.
But okay. Let's see. Oh, we've already talked about the one for women. Have you seen something come up with women? Have women started something similar?
Yeah. So a few times a year, actually, kind of spins on Exodus come up. At the beginning, I'll just be transparent with you. It like kind of hurt. I was like, man, we're starting something good. Like, why are these different versions like of what we're doing kind of emerging?
About this, I can see why that would be
it was really challenging when I first kind of learned about that.
How many different kind of groups like this have sprung?
I mean, over the last few years.
Nineveh 90 is one of them. I've heard
at
of
least
that.
10.
I don't know what it is, but I've heard of it.
At least 10. Yeah.
Well, it's like imitation, right? Is the highest form of flattery, maybe.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's interesting because I don't even look at Exodus like it's our thing. In a way, like I feel like our team is a steward of an experience that was really powerful and continues to be very powerful. Like I didn't set out to create it because I didn't create it.
Yeah.
And so we talk about this in our team all the time. Like we're a steward of something that as long as the Lord is using it, we'll do this work. And if he shows us that he's not anymore, that's fine. Like we'll go on away. Like we're not super attached to its success or its failure. And so when I see kind of spins on it and we get in touch with the folks, it's like, well, like what's motivating this? Like what's wrong with the work we're doing or like what, et cetera. And
what do they say?
There's just a lot of interesting motivations that come up. So like I'm a big, I don't know, I mentioned this earlier, but I'm a huge believer in therapy. Like there's just so much more going on in us than like meets the eye, right? So it's like, but when you listen to like some of the unconscious things, it's typically, I want to start something. I want to lead something. I want to make this big change in the world. And that's fine, but like, is that a calling from the Lord? And then like, is this fruitful? Can you show me that the way you're spinning this is apostolically fruitful, right? Because it's not just about creating things. Like when you're doing ministry in the church, it's like, well, like, are you actually answering a need? And is the Holy Spirit moving?
Let's drill into this a little bit, because it seems like never before in history have we been able to generate a company or a podcast or a website or whatever so quickly.
Yeah.
And as you say, there's a lot of dopamine, I'm sure, that rushes in when you got this new idea and you want to get it out to the world. And so I'm going to start a new Twitter handle. I'm going to start a new website. Podcasts are popping up every day. And as you say, we're glad that these things are happening. But I think we can all fall into the trap of getting excited about starting something, but not really discerning it. And what you end up seeing is a lot of these things will spring up and then they'll die down. And you don't hear about them again.
Yeah, for sure. And so it's flattering, but so I'll be in touch with folks who have new ideas and all the time, you know, kind of based off of what we've been able to do. And the thing that I go back to in all of these conversations is just like, you know, is this a calling from the Lord for you? Like, it's kind of that simple.
How do you discern whether it is or not?
Yeah, sure. I mean, spiritual directors are great. You know, having a consistent prayer life is essential. You know, but at least as I relate it to my own experience, I mean, there were super dark times when we were starting Exodus. You know, so just to tell the story, I mean, within 3 months of starting the ministry, the priest who started it was removed, not for any kind of indiscretion on his part, but just because his bishop really wasn't passionate about the work we were doing. And so I had a decision at the age of 24, like, I didn't start this. I don't know what I'm doing. We don't have any money. You know, like, I don't know if I can do this, you know. And he called a bishop friend. His name's Bishop Kevin Rhodes in the Diocese of Fort Wayne, South Bend. He's the man. He's a great man. And he called him up. I got a meeting with him. And I was like, Bishop, this is what we're trying to do. Didn't try to start something ecclesially rogue. I'm not super interested in that at all because I love the church more than anything. But this is the need I see, like men who are just enslaved to different idols. And this is something that's worked, at least in the past. And, you know, he gave us his blessing to go up there, right? And so, like, that was kind of a sign for me. But also it was just, God speaks, you know, like when he's moving something and when the Holy Spirit is like with you, it's like he makes things possible that are not possible for you to make happen. And this happens to us all the time where things should break down and snap and never work. Like at least,
church.
Yeah,
the church would be an example, right?
Totally.
2,000 years later.
And to us, it happens like at least every year where I'm like, oh boy, like I don't know how we're going to get out of this, right? And somehow, some way, like God always provides for us, and then He's so present to me and to our team in just His action in our ministry. So I guess I just like comparing it to my own experience. It's like, you know, is the Lord really moving you, you know, to start this? And if so, great, do it. Like there's nothing, you know, nothing should stop you then, you know, but when things are really dark, you should keep going because, you know, it's the Lord who's vouchsafing this at the end of the day, right? So So for the things that start and fizzle, it's like, okay, that's great, you know, but learn that lesson and then move forward from there, right? Yeah. I don't know. That's my experience.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So to the men who would say, like, this is just unrealistic, you're saying, okay, don't do it.
Yeah.
Just do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
I mean, most people I talk to, the vast majority say this is amazing. When people complain about it, I wonder how much time they have on their hands. It's not like you're going around forcing people to engage in an ascetical program. People are willingly committing to something that they've read about. Why is this something you can... And they're praying and fasting and developing brotherhood. I don't know why this could... I don't know. Sometimes... Actually, another question I wanted to ask you is, are you glad that the Lord saw to it that someone else came up with this?
Yeah.
Like for your humility.
For sure. Well, that's a great question, actually, Matt. Because I talk about this all the time, because it's like in ministry world, you can just get so attached to your things, you know, and to be honest, you know, you know this in church world, you know.
I know this in my own life.
Okay. So it's just like, I don't know, you know, there's something about that's always kind of rubbed my spirit. And I was talking, Jason Everett's become a good friend and he's been through Exodus and he's one of the most free apostolic people I have ever met. And it's so beautiful. But
what do you mean free apostolic?
I mean, he's just so clearly got a call to do the work that he does.
There's a man who's faithful
and
to
he's
one
not,
thing.
and there's nothing like remotely competitive about it.
No, not at all.
And I love that about him. And that's really affected me kind of as an example. But for us, it's like when people take a shot at Exodus, it's like, well, first off, do you know what you're taking a shot at? Because most of the time you don't. There's some kind of misperception. But in the other times, it's just like, I'm sorry, like this is what we have. This is what we do. This is not my thing. I'm a steward of something that happened. That's it. But it leaves you just free to like, I don't know. It doesn't allow for a sort of attachment. And I think like when you consider like this is a 90-day spiritual exercise to grow in freedom, it leaves our team remarkably free before it. It's like, is this your thing now? Is it, so it's like, let's just share this. That's it.
So I wrote to the fraternity, my fraternity, and I asked them to send you some questions today.
Okay.
So I don't think they'll mind me saying the name. Greg Willits says, all right, so forgive me if
I've met Greg.
Do you know Greg?
Wait,
Greg's awesome.
Yeah.
Rosary Army guy.
Yeah.
So he lives close to us. So.
Okay.
What are the secret loopholes so that we can drink more? He's being funny, but also not. And he says, can we have a drink and relax one other discipline? So he's referring to Sundays and solemnities where one ascetical practice can be relaxed. I know what your answer is, but say it anyway.
Yeah, my encouragement, especially with like alcohol and technology, is like, this is going to be way, way better for you if you just actually take a break. So we do encourage a relaxation to honor the solemnity. But even when you look at how solemnities are supposed to be celebrated by church law, it's
doesn't mean
not
gluttony.
what you do typically, right? Yeah. So anyway, my encouragement is if that's the exception you're looking for, that's probably what you could use some space from. So.
He's going to hate you for that answer, but it's probably right.
Yeah.
Another question he had was, what did we ever do to him to make him hate us so much? Nothing? Okay. Yeah. Okay, my friend Mac Barron, he runs a podcast, Catholics in a Small Town.
Awesome.
Good guy. He says, a repeated bullet point action item in Exodus 90 is to be joyful. What does that mean? He says, parentheses, duh, parentheses. How do men in the midst of asceticism force that joyfulness, or rather stay joyful despite being hungry all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I just go back to...
Well, the fatigue of it, I think, is another way of putting it, right? There is a fatigue that sets in a few weeks into Exodus.
For sure. There is a fatigue, and it does get challenging. The first 2 weeks are like sheer joy. So to be honest with you, whenever I get a message from guys, oh my gosh, this is changing my life, this is awesome, my thought always in my mind is, this is going to get rough for this guy. And we know this actually by studying the guys. Yeah. By day 50, everybody wanes. So the guys that are super excited about it are like not that excited about it. The guys who like hated it at the start are actually way more leveled. So what we say there is, it's going to get challenging. It's going to be difficult, but what we consistently observe is like there is actually a joy that comes upon you. So when we say be joyful, I think that's more about like you are placing yourself in a position to be blessed by the abundant life of God. And that's the wellspring that we experience when we're joyful, right? And so let that happen, right? And so I know early on in the seminary when they were starting this up, that was the remarkable experience they had was, they were coming to their fraternity meetings with smiles on their faces. And that's very counterintuitive.
There's something cool about being in something intense like this as a brotherhood too that really bonds you. Yeah. So we have this open porch night at our house once a month where we basically invite everybody to come over and bring food and drink. We just hang out. We had like over 100 people show up last month. Anyway, so this month though, we all sat around the table and it was our fraternity. We're all chatting, and there was one other guy who didn't know about Exodus 90, and you could just tell that there was this love and bond that he wished he was a part of. And I don't think that bond would have been so evident if we weren't engaged in something difficult together. Does that make sense? It really does unite you.
I think frequently about, saints never, are very rarely isolated occurrences. They come in pairs, they come in groups. Like we see this a lot in church history. Yeah. And what I like to think, at least, is like friendship is just such an important part of the spiritual life and the pursuit of holiness. And So what I love about Exodus is how it takes previously kind of untapped friend groups and makes them incredibly intentional. And that is such a beautiful, motivating thing to know that, sure, we had, over, for the guys that ended on Easter last year, which is our biggest time, we had about 10,500 men and around Easter Sunday, right? But to us, we don't look at them as isolated individuals. That's over 2,500 fraternities that exist that didn't before that. And that's just so sweet. And I go back to like my own life too. Like I went to the college seminary right out of high school, and I was just so moved by meeting these other guys, all of whom were seeking the heart of God, wanted to serve the church, and like they're real. Like they got real struggles, but they've got virtues and charisms and. But in the seminary I was in St. Paul, it was St. John Vianney College Seminary. You could not live there and not be known. Like you were known by a brotherhood, and that was such a moving thing for me. And so anyway, that's I don't know, a couple of the guys on our team actually were in that seminary, and we like to think that we're kind of fostering that experience that we shared there, which was amazing, which is the fraternal experience.
Yeah, how much of the feedback do you get is, I've met amazing brothers, friends that I never have had before?
Yeah, we get that a lot, and that's beautiful. Exodus can be sort of a spark for new friendships that didn't exist, especially, for men's groups. I mean, we know how easy it is to participate in the church today and be known by nobody at all and be so lonely, right? And Exodus that's not really possible. I mean, if that's true by the end, like you really messed it up.
Yeah, you didn't do it properly.
But it's so we hear that. But again, I love so much those lifelong friends who are way closer, after having been through, something difficult that led them to God. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sorry, I'm laughing as I haven't read these yet.
Yeah,
I
it's
texted
great.
my brothers before I came in. Someone says, all I ask for is the home address of whoever came up with the cold shower idea. They're all joking. All right, so here's an interesting question, though.
Yeah.
He says, seriously, I'm lifting a lot of weights as rigorous exercise, but I'm concerned about lack of protein and calories to help muscles heal after. So the question, it sounds like he's asking, is can I have a protein shake when I work out?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I take shakes. Actually, when I'm on Exodus in the morning and on non-fast days, in the evening. So anyway,
that's cool.
I'm a big protein shake player.
Yeah, that's good to know.
You wouldn't know it because I'm so lanky.
I'm like you. I go to CrossFit and people are like, really?
Yeah.
Like, shut up.
You
should see me what I would look like if I didn't go to CrossFit.
Seriously.
But CrossFit's an interesting analogy because people make friends at CrossFit, and part of it is because you look at each other before the WOD starts. You're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
And there's that similar, like, we're doing this together that brings about.
Yeah, and you have that experience in a sports team, and guys actually tell us, especially guys in the military or who are engaged in pretty high-level sports, like, wow, these are friendships the like of which I haven't known since that time, And that's a cool thing to experience. Yeah. For a spiritual experience, at the same time.
Someone says this, and again, I'm sure you must get exhausted by hearing people suggest modifications.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
This all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so allow me to do it anyway. He says, I also think there should be some slight modifications for single men versus married. For example, I think it should be a requirement for married men to lead a nightly prayer with the whole family. This is cool that the modification he's suggesting is something he wants to take on.
Yeah.
So he should just do that.
Yeah. Sounds like it. That's awesome. I would say this. I mean, some people look at Exodus and are like, this should be a lot better. Or there should be a prep stage, or there should be more support during the program. And to all of the criticisms, I'm typically like, you're right, And so why don't we work on that, So a part of it's just being patient with what you have and doing what you can. I
also think there is an excitement that comes about when one decides they want to be a better person.
Yeah.
And that excitement wanes quickly.
Yeah.
So for example, if someone goes to their spiritual director and they say, I want to pray, I want to be someone who's a real prayer warrior, I need to get in shape. The spiritual director might say, okay, when you wake up, make a morning offering, pray the Angelus at noon, nightly examen at night. Just do that. And like, no. I want to be more intense.
Yeah.
Okay. See if you can be faithful to that for a week, then come back to me. And very often we can't be.
We can't be. Yeah. No, it's so true.
talk about the importance of the nightly examen. What is that? Why is it essential?
Yeah, so every night at the end, you kind of review your day. The model for that is not ours, obviously. That's Ignatian. And a great sort of, part of, a rich part of our tradition as Catholics. And so during that time, it's a space to welcome God in and to help you with the Holy Spirit to review your day. How did the practices of Exodus, shape your day, agitate you, whatever? What did you experience that day? What sins did you commit? And it's an opportunity to kind of see God's action. Like, it's not even, it's not to be confused with just an examination of conscience. It's like, how was God alive for me? And I don't know anybody who makes active examens at the end of the day that is not sensing more and more God's activity in their life, right? And so, I don't know. This is not a Christian comment, but it's certainly true that the unexamined life is not worth living, right?
Amen. Yeah, it's true.
And so...
what happens is, like, not only are we not examining our life, we're constantly just responding to stimuli.
Yeah.
And even when it feels like it was a decision of ours to buy that book or this thing, we were just responding to this marketing campaign from Amazon that we didn't even know that was happening.
Yeah.
And when we just pull ourselves away from that stuff, we can be more intentional.
Yeah, and you just become way more protagonistic. Like, you become way more of an influencer in your life than when you're just kind of receptive to whatever comes your way. Not in a so it's just so important to take a step back and realize, like, what a gift, like, life is, your life is, your day is, even if it's super challenging, like, it is such a gift, but it's hard to realize that with the demands of life, especially.
I've been finding that really helpful to do the nightly examen, because I realize just how many great things happen today.
Yeah.
And as you say, you just don't examine it, so you don't think about it.
Yeah, and you miss them, like...
Yes.
Like, you don't need to...
You would never have noticed them.
Yeah, you don't need to go on vacation every quarter. Like, you just need to wake up to, like, what's right in front of you. And that's pretty amazing. I've been super influenced by the work of Luigi Giussani and Communion and Liberation in this regard, that, the incarnation, the mysteries of the faith are unfolding right before you. If you just wake up a little bit and take seriously what you're experiencing. And so anyway, I think the examen at the end of the day really facilitates that. And I also think it's a nod, I think, to the Jesuits. Like, when we talk about Exodus, we refer to it as a spiritual exercise, a period of time of intensity that's handed over to God. I had the joy of making a 30-day Ignatian spiritual exercise retreat a few years ago. And it was just a moving encounter with the Lord. And so when I think about the work that we are doing, in a way, I'm very influenced by that. And I'm very motivated to make that sort of time set apart for God possible in the hustle and bustle of lay life. That's what I love about Exodus. It's like, you can be doing anything and make space and time, for this too.
Now, the thing I have been failing at, which I want to stop failing at, and so I need your advice, is the holy hour. What do you mean, for those watching who might be confused, by the holy hour?
Yeah.
Is this something that has to be taken in one chunk, broken up? What does it look like?
Yeah. As far as how it should be taken, I really think that is kind of contingent upon you. I don't mean for that to be a bad answer, but, like, if you've got a prayer life and you've had times in your life where you've had great, meditative and contemplative prayer in chunks, like, really try to spend that hour, if possible, in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Mm-hmm. But if that's just, like, never been a thing for you, try breaking up that time, throughout the day. The thing that we are undaunting with to the men, regardless of where they're at before, is for 20 minutes, just shut up. Like, just sit there, be with the Lord, whether you're just talking to him as a friend, whatever that is, and trying to listen to his voice. Silent prayer is so important. So yes, like, we encourage guys, obviously, guys through Exodus should be going to confession every month. We encourage guys to pray the rosary. We talk about the saints all the time. But it's important to just spend some time with silence. There's a great book Cardinal Sarah wrote on the power of silence, and it's amazing the remedy that silence can be in your life, and helping you to realize not just who you are, but God's powerful activity in your life. And you're just not going to get that without stopping and sitting back and not clunking all your prayer time up with things to do.
Yeah.
That might be an ironic thing for some of the guys behind Exodus to say, because that can be one of the ways it's kind of dismissed. It's like, oh, you're just adding things to a list. But it's like, no, I mean, the most important time is giving that space to the Lord. So honestly, a few years ago, we were seeing Exodus grow. It had been doubling about every year, and that's held true to this point. And there got to be a time where I started to just be baffled by like, why is this growing? Because like we don't have the budget for this to grow.
People have to take cold showers.
Like why do you want to do this? But all that's to say, it's I had some time in prayer, and the thing that I just kind of saw was all Exodus is doing is creating a space for Jesus Christ to speak and to show up again. And it's just amazing how even good Catholic men are not giving him the opportunity to move in their lives. And so when it comes to the growth of Exodus, we try to work hard. And yes, the guys behind this are very talented in their own regards. And I love working with them. But at the end of the day, it is the dynamic encounter with the Lord that I think is moving this, and which that makes men so excited that they just share with their friends. I mean, it's on the course of this massive multiplication effect, and that's because of what the men encounter with the Lord.
Indeed, yeah. If people weren't getting anything from this, if this genuinely was unrealistic, if men's lives weren't changing, this would not be growing.
Right.
I think most people hear about this through word of mouth.
Yeah, that's the predominant factor. So over time, we want to improve other ways of sharing the word about Exodus, but it's predominantly through just guys sharing their experience.
Regarding that 20 minutes of contemplative prayer, I think sometimes that our false understanding of what prayer ought to look and feel like is a big obstacle to actually praying.
Yeah.
In other words, we have this idea that if I am to pray, I have to feel a certain way. My head won't be rushing around with all sorts of thoughts. I'll be in a stone church with incense somewhere.
Yeah.
And this so often isn't our experience. And so we have this almost like, like we have to accomplish something. It has to look a certain way. And then when we try to do it, you sit down on your back porch or you're on your couch while the kids are away and you've just got a pile of laundry there. It just doesn't feel at all holy.
Yeah. And then
sit in that awkwardness is a very difficult thing, and it doesn't feel like I'm praying. And so we just go, well, I just won't do that then because I don't like how that makes me feel. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think it's a super common experience, and for most people, and unfortunately, I think most people's out of like, well, that couldn't be what this is supposed to be. So it's the priests and it's the nuns, and they've got to figure out all that, contemplative, passive stuff. But again, I think it's a lot simpler than that. And I think it's as simple as a dialogue with the Lord. And over time, your sort of receptivity and capacity for it increases like anything. That is to say, though, it's, all you are responsible for is just putting yourself in a place to be found.
Yes.
What happens to you afterwards is not on you, So it's like if nothing profound happens to you, it's not your fault, and it's okay.
What I hear you saying, and I've never used that in the beginning of a sentence in my life, and I'm kind of ashamed that I did, but what I heard you say was, you are not required to have 20 minutes of prayerful bliss a day. You are required to sit down and shut up for 20 minutes. That's all you're required to do.
That's it.
That's what I need to hear you tell me, because this is the thing I'm really not doing good at. Yesterday, I didn't sit down 20 minutes. I didn't pray. I woke up, did my morning prayer.
Yeah.
That's it yesterday.
Yeah.
Totally failed. So slap me. Tell me what I got to do.
Hey,
well, you've already told me.
Yeah. I mean, again, and it's what happens to us in prayer is not on us, and it's not like we can manufacture contemplative, passive prayer experiences. Right. So we don't need to worry about it.
That's what Eastern atheistic techniques are about.
That's
not what the Christian faith's about.
Yeah. So, at the very least, that's one thing I really love, about this work and what we're trying to accomplish is, democratizing prayer and just like making zero excuses for the fact that you don't have time or whatever.
Shut up, you do.
Yeah,
you realize how much time you have when you give up YouTube. You know?
Yeah, no, it can be rattling for guys. I mean, so that can be one of the reasons not to do Exodus. Well, there's just a lot going on, and indeed there can be certain life circumstances where this probably isn't the best time. But it's like, hey, when you remove some of the ways you're distracting yourself, you start to realize like there's a lot more time on your hands than you previously thought, and being busy, you come to find out quickly, is just a kind of a medication to what you think is a meaningful life.
Thoughts on podcasts and audiobooks?
Oh, so we get this question a lot. I mean, generally, I'm a huge fan, of podcasts, great, speakers. Am I allowed to say that on your own show?
I would like you to say that on my
right.
show. That makes me feel great.
But I do encourage the guys, like, if I don't know, listen to yourself is what I want to say, where it's like,
if you want this too much.
If you kind of know, like, I'm trying to get away from this thing, or I'm bored and I don't want to be bored, it's like, well, maybe there's something for you in the silence, right? Listen to yourself. Listen to the parts of you as they speak, because they do, know. And anyway, all that's to say, like, no,
this is super helpful to have a brotherhood in this regard, because they will help you please God, not become too scrupulous. So I just did like a 20-something hour flight to Africa. And I said to my guys, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to watch the television that's in front of me, but like, I really want to listen to podcasts. And they're like, do it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, on that topic, like of scrupulosity too, and the brotherhood, that's why they're so important. They give you perspective that you don't have. And, if anything, I think Exodus is a real challenge to sort of the dispensation culture of the church today. And I'm really happy to
What do you mean by that?
Just to like, this is a holy day.
There's always
this
a
is
way
a holy
out.
day. We'll bump that to Sunday. We don't need to worry about Thursday, whatever.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's the way forward. And I don't think that's borne fruit for us as it comes to meet on Fridays as well.
Absolutely.
So what, the work of this, I think, is a challenge to a lot of that kind of dispensation mindset that exists today.
Yep.
One of the unfortunate consequences or unintended consequences is like, for those that do struggle with scrupulosity, does something like Exodus encourage that? And, for us, it's very far from the intentions of this or its origin. And especially for those that are scrupulous, it's important to have others in your life that give you a perspective that you don't totally have, right? So scrupulosity, is sinful, and that can be scary, when you're scrupulous.
Great.
Right? And so it's like, let's say you compromise on a discipline. Did you sin? Well, it depends what happened, but probably not. So it just becomes an opportunity for grace with your brothers. Like, hey,
totally put sugar in my coffee.
Yeah, I did, and I know we're not supposed to do that, but it's not sinful, so get over yourself and move forward.
Look at Jesus, not you.
Yeah.
All right, well, this is fantastic. I'm running out of questions to ask. I know as soon as this is over, I'm going to think of 100 things I should have said. What would you like to say? What is your hope for Exodus 90 over the next year? Are there any big things you're rolling out soon, or is it just about staying the course?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I found out recently that 25% of the men through Exodus are not in the United States.
Wow.
And I didn't know that literally until I came here. So that really intrigued me. So we're really interested in translating Exodus out. I guess there's a part of me that always thought, this is kind of an American Catholic thing. It won't really work elsewhere. And then just the fruitfulness overseas and really interesting parts of the world have showed me like, wow, man, maybe there is something more to this that really feeds and speaks to the universal church and different cultures. So I'm pretty excited by that. So we want to roll out our Spanish program. We've got some fundraising work to do for that.
That's fantastic.
But
so
that's
a
desire.
Such a need.
But I got to say, like, I read a book. I've got it with me because it's been so impactful in my life. The End of the Modern World, Romano Guardini.
Haven't read it. Tell me about it.
And I hadn't read it until a few years ago, and this was after we had started working on Exodus. And one of the things he laments in modernity is that just through the, sort of, quote, progress of science, and this sort of, manipulation of nature through technology and our, all of the comforts and progress, et cetera, that we make in terms of production, manufacturing, whatever, we might be gaining a power over everything, but we're not necessarily gaining power over our power. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Which is to say, like, one of the things that he advances for us,
we've learned to control everything
except
as
ourselves.
we stop being able to control ourselves.
Exactly. And when I read that, I was really, really affected by it, and the value he says that has to be present in our age, and men and women today, is a commitment to asceticism, to make ourselves uncomfortable, to say no to comforts so that we can say yes to God. And anyway, kind of as a concluding thought, I would just say that it's not okay to just like go with the flow. And when we do, even if we're participating in all kinds of churchy things, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're close to the heart of God. And boy, would it be unfortunate to wake up at the end and realize, like, no, I was just comfortable the whole time. And so regardless of whether or not you're called to do Exodus, it's important that we take a step back to look at the lives we're living and to ask ourselves, is this really what I was made for? So I would just say that. And then it's just to say, like, the Lord wants, like, we were made for freedom, and this is just so on the surface of the scriptures that it's bizarre and very uncompromising. Most of the apostolic letters in the Gospels, it's the truth that sets us free.
Yeah. If the Son sets you free, you'll be free indeed.
And we could go on and on.
Yeah.
St. James calls Christianity of law of liberty. And I think sometimes as Catholics, we look at the sufferings and the unhealed things in our lives as our crosses. And I just don't know that that's true. I really feel like the Lord, well, he is a healer, but he has made us for a freedom and a joy and a sort of lightness, a sort of alacrity in our spirit. That doesn't resemble anything close to bondage. It's not to say that we don't have suffering, and suffering is the path, to redemption, as we see on the cross. But it's for freedom that Christ set us free. And so I would just close with that. Like, the Lord has made us for a freedom, the likes of which the world does not know, and that the world should see, like, when they look us in the eye. Like, they shouldn't just see busy people doing things.
Churchy things.
Yeah. Like, they should encounter somebody that's exceptional. Like, when you look them in the eyes, like, wow, like there's someone present to me here, and I'm not seeing that anywhere else, right? So anyway, I just say that, like, again, it just goes back to our mission, which is just to free men. This is an exercise in freedom.
It's beautiful.
Again,
this is not the freedom you get from watching a Matt Fradd Show episode. Like, it really isn't. I mean, you might watch this and then decide to do Exodus 90, but there's this very consumer mentality even in the church, right? I'm going to do this Bible study. I'm going to do this. I'm going to watch this. But what you're doing is you're getting into men's lives, like right up in their business, and telling them to forsake all the things that they've begun to cling to. Yeah. No wonder you're seeing tremendous transformation. Yeah. What would you say right now? There's a man, this will be released in a couple of days, so I'm hoping like mid-September.
Great.
Tell them what to do. What are the next steps? They've watched this. They're like, all right, I'm down. I'm going to do Exodus 90. What's the next steps?
That's great. So guys, start Exodus every day. So if you're like, hey, I want to get going, I've got some friends, then go. Many men come to end on a particular feast day that's either close to them, or Christmas or Easter are the big times. So this month, the start date to end on Christmas is September 26th. So coming up here soon.
Great.
So that can be, you got enough time, hopefully, to form a group of friends to get started. Check out the site, exodus90.com. We also have applications both for iOS and Android. So check out the App Store or the Google Play Store. You can download it, and it kind of just walks you through in a very easy fashion getting started with your friends. For parish leaders, for priests, we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you to get this started and moving in your parish. So all the promotional materials, the bulletins, the handouts, all of those things are created for you already. It's just about downloading and taking them to the printer and getting started. So that would be the encouragement. It's just, if this is for you, if this is something you're called to and you're ready for, September 26th, 90 days to Christmas of 2019. Yeah.
Now, a guy watching you says, I don't have men in my life to do this with. I'm sure you may have heard that a number of times. What do you say to him?
Gosh, that's a great question. I would love to be able to do more for you than I can do right now.
Yeah, is
what I want to say to him. So we really just would say, hey, you got to wait until you have those guys.
Yeah.
Don't start, until you've got your group.
How big does a group have to be?
We encourage groups to be between like 5 and 7. Definitely don't have just one other guy. Where possible, we'd love for directors to be involved, whether that's a priest, ideally, or other guys who have been through Exodus before. They get how it works. They can be great mentors for groups. But yeah, if you're alone, we're trying to do work to make it easier for you. But I would also just say, like, here's an evangelical opportunity. So I'll tell you a story, actually. I invited a Lutheran pastor in my town to do Exodus with me this past year.
You knew him before inviting?
I did, but not well. And not super well, anyway. And so I invited him, and long story short, we had a powerful experience, a great group. Catholic seminaries are very different from like Protestant seminaries, not to knock on them, but a holistic formation mentality is not super present. So Exodus was like the first time he had really experienced kind of the joy of the accountability of a fraternity that I was talking about before in my own seminary experience. And long story short, he had been flirting with Catholicism for a while, and it was only through Exodus, though, that he was finally able to just say, like, yeah, I just have to do this. So he resigned from his church. Can you believe this? I can't believe this. He resigned from his church, became a Catholic.
What?
And is now teaching Catholic theology in a local high school for us, which is pretty sweet. And so I say all of that because,
evangelistic opportunity.
It's an opportunity,
so
right?
You're a man out there. Maybe you don't know men right now.
It's an opportunity, right?
Find your Lutheran pastor in your area.
Yeah, find your let's go. No, so, but I mean that, which is, pray about the people you should reach out to. And for those guys that are in the throes of this real struggle, like, this could be a life-saving thing for him.
Yeah.
And the truth is, that's most of the people in your life, and you just don't know. So to those guys, my first nod is always, well, I want to help, and we're going to do more, but it's also like, get out there and talk to people.
Awesome. All right, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks
Cheers,
for being on the
Matt.
show. That was great.
Yeah, it's a joy. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Enjoy.